Juwu Park gripped the controls of his research vessel as warning lights flashed across the command console. The quantum drive had malfunctioned, sending the ship hurtling toward an uncharted planet in the distant Cetus system. "Emergency protocols engaged," announced the ship's eye, preparing for crash landing. Sweat beaded on Juwu's forehead as he fought to stabilize the descent. The horizon shuddered violently, metal groaning under the strain of atmospheric entry. "Come on," Juwu muttered, redirecting power to the emergency thrusters. The ship's hull glowed red-hot as it plummeted through layers of swirling clouds. Brief glimpses of a verdant landscape flashed through the view screen. Forests, mountains, and what looked like vast plains of tall purple grass. With a final desperate maneuver, Juwu aimed for a clearing between dense tree-like structures. The horizon crashed through the canopy, snapping massive branches before skidding across the ground and coming to rest at the edge of a crystal-clear lake. Silence fell. Juwu blinked, surprised to find himself alive. He unbuckled his harness with shaking hands and ran a quick medical scan. A few bruises, but nothing serious. The same couldn't be said for his ship. "Damage report," he commanded. The AI's voice crackled through damaged speakers. "Quantum drive critically damaged. Hull integrity at 62%. Life support functional. Communication systems offline." Juwu sighed. Estimated repair time. A pause. Self-repair systems require approximately 730 standard Earth days to regenerate critical quantum components. 2 years. Juwu slumped in his seat. Any alternatives? Negative. Required materials not in database. Rescue beacon activated, but signal strength insufficient to reach nearest outpost. Juwu gathered his emergency pack and survival gear. Before venturing outside, he checked the atmospheric readings. To his surprise, the air was breathable, oxygen levels slightly higher than Earth normal, with trace elements that his suit filtered out as a precaution. The exit hatch hissed open, revealing a world of vibrant colors. 2 moons hung in the lavender sky, one small and silver, the other larger with a faint blue tinge. The air smelled sweet, like cinnamon and citrus. Tall trees with spiral trunks surrounded the crash site, their leaves shifting from green to blue with the breeze. Juwu spent the first day securing the ship and setting up a perimeter. The scanner detected no immediate threats, though strange animal calls echoed from the forest. When night fell, bioluminescent flowers opened across the landscape, bathing everything in gentle blue light. On the second day, Juwu explored further, collecting plant samples and mapping the surrounding area. The flora seemed to respond to his presence, some plants curling away while others leaned toward him. Small flying creatures with translucent wings followed him curiously before darting away. He found fruits resembling earth plums, but his analyzer warned against consumption until further testing. A stream nearby provided clean water, and his water purifier worked overtime to fill his containers. By the third day, Juwu had established a routine. Morning checks of the ship, followed by exploration and resource gathering. The horizon's solar panels captured enough energy to power essential systems, but Juwu conserved where possible, unsure what the changing seasons might bring. While climbing a rocky outcrop for a better view of the landscape, Juwu spotted movement below. He froze, reaching slowly for his scanner. The readings confused him. Humanoid life forms, but with biological signatures unlike anything in his database. Descending carefully, Juwu followed the trail to a small clearing. There, he found fresh tracks and what appeared to be deliberately placed markers, stones arranged in patterns too regular to be natural. "Intelligent life," he whispered, excitement and apprehension mixing in his voice. That evening, as Juwu documented his findings, the perimeter alarm sounded. He grabbed his non-lethal pulse weapon and cautiously approached the ship's viewport. Outside, illuminated by the ship's exterior lights, stood a group of tall humanoid beings. Their skin shimmered with patterns of iridescent light, blues, purples, and golds flowing like liquid across their bodies. They had slender builds, stood nearly 7 feet tall, and moved with extraordinary grace. All appeared female in form, with elongated features and large, almond-shaped eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They carried spears tipped with crystalline points and wore minimal clothing made from woven fibers and what looked like living plants. Their hair, if it could be called that, moved independently, resembling flowing strands of colored light. Jiwoo watched, mesmerized, as they examined his ship, touching the metal hull with expressions of wonder. One of them, taller than the rest with patterns of gold dominating her skin, noticed the viewport and locked eyes with him. She didn't appear startled or afraid. Instead, she tilted her head and raised a hand in what seemed like greeting. Jiwoo's translator implant hummed, attempting to process the musical sounds she began making. First contact protocols, Jiwoo reminded himself, heart racing. He gathered his field kit, including his portable translator, and prepared to exit the ship. Outside, the aliens stepped back, forming a loose circle around him. None raised their weapons, but all remained alert. The tall one with golden skin approached, making sounds that his translator struggled to decode. Jiwoo raised his empty hands. "I come in peace. My name is Jiwoo Park. My ship crashed, and I'm stranded here." The translator finally began processing their language, converting it to simple symbols on his wrist display. Not words yet, but concepts, curiosity, caution, wonder. The leader spoke again, pointing to herself. "Daeun," she said, the word clear despite her musical accent. "Daeun," Jiwoo repeated, touching his chest. "Jiwoo." She nodded, then gestured to the others before pointing deeper into the forest. The translator suggested, "Follow/come/journey." Jiwoo hesitated, glancing back at his ship. Survival training dictated he should never abandon his only shelter and lifeline. But the curious, non-threatening behavior of these beings and the reality of his 2-year wait made his decision clear. He secured the ship, activated its defensive protocols, and gathered essential supplies. With one last deep breath, Jiwoo stepped forward to follow Daeun and her companions into the alien forest. As they walked, the group formed a protective formation around him. Jiwoo noticed how they moved in perfect coordination with their environment, not disturbing a single plant, communicating with subtle gestures and light patterns on their skin. The forest grew denser, the trees taller. Jiwoo would have been lost without guides, as the landscape seemed to shift and change subtly as they passed. What looked like ordinary vegetation sometimes moved, revealing itself to be camouflaged creatures that scattered at the group's approach. After several hours of travel, they reached a massive tree with a trunk wider than Jiwoo's entire ship. And there, integrated into its vast structure, was a settlement unlike anything he had ever seen. Living buildings that seemed to grow from the tree itself, connected by bridges of woven vines and platforms that spiraled up into the canopy. Lights glowed from within structures, and more of the aliens appeared, their skin patterns shifting rapidly at the sight of him. Children, or what Jiwoo assumed were children, darted forward before being gently pulled back by adults. "Welcome," his translator finally decoded from Daeun's melodic speech. "Skywalker." New friend. Jiwoo Park, alone and stranded light years from home, faced the beginning of what would become 2 remarkable years among the people of this world. Jiwoo's first week among the Very passed in a blur of new experiences. The aliens had welcomed him into their tree city, which they called Naru. Their homes grew from the massive tree itself, chambers and passages formed by guided growth rather than construction. Everything lived, walls that breathed, lights that grew from glowing fungi, even furniture that adjusted to whoever sat upon it. The Very were all female, or at least appeared so to human eyes. They stood nearly 7 feet tall with slender builds and skin that rippled with patterns of light, their primary form of emotional expression. Bright blues and greens showed happiness or excitement, while dark purples and reds signaled caution or concern. Minji became Juwoo's designated guide. Her skin patterns were particularly vibrant, shifting rapidly as she struggled to learn his language while teaching him theirs. She had volunteered immediately when Daeun asked for someone to help the Skywalker adjust. "This is eating place," Minji said one morning, her words heavily accented but understandable. She led Juwoo to a large open platform where Very gathered around communal bowls of fruit and what looked like glowing honey. "Food good for you. We check." Indeed, the tribe's healers had carefully tested which local foods would be safe for Juwoo's alien biology. They seemed fascinated by his physical differences, his 5 fingers instead of their 6, his solid-colored skin, his need for more sleep. "Why all women?" Juwoo asked as they ate, using his portable translator to help bridge the language gap. Minji's skin flickered with patterns that suggested amusement. "Not women like you think. We are very. We change with seasons. Now all air." She searched for the word. "Nurturers. When cold season comes, some become cedars." Juwoo nodded, though he didn't fully understand. The very biology was unlike anything in Earth's records. After breakfast, Minji took him to the learning circle, where younger Very practiced manipulating plant growth with touch and sound. They sang to seedlings, which responded by growing in specific patterns. A small child made a flower bloom simply by humming to it. "Your people control machines," Minji observed. "We speak to living things, and they listen." Juwoo showed her his tablet computer. "Our machines can be alive too, in a different way. This can learn and adapt." Minji's skin darkened with skepticism. Not alive. No spirit song. The language barrier wasn't just about words, Juwoo realized. Entire concepts existed in one culture that had no parallel in the other. On his 10th day, a storm struck the forest. Juwoo watched in awe as the entire tree city responded. Openings sealed themselves, flexible branches bent rather than broke, and water was channeled through natural gutters to collection pools. Daeun found him staring at the rain. "You understand now. We do not fight nature. We become part of its dance." That night, drums echoed through the settlement. Juwoo followed the sound to find the Very gathered in their central platform. Their skin glowed brilliantly in complex patterns that seemed synchronized. "Storm celebration," Minji explained, appearing beside him. "Growth comes from sky water. We give thanks." "May I watch?" he asked. "No, you participate." Minji took his hand, pulling him into the circle. The drums beat faster. The Very moved in flowing motions, their skin pulsing with light. Juwoo tried to follow along, feeling awkward and heavy compared to their grace, but no one laughed at his efforts. Instead, several Very adjusted their movements to help him find the rhythm. By the dance's end, Juwoo was breathless but smiling. For the first time since the crash, he felt something beyond anxiety or scientific curiosity. He felt included. Weeks passed. Juwoo established a routine of morning visits to his ship to check repairs, followed by time with the Very. He helped where he could, applying his engineering knowledge to improve their water collection system. They taught him to identify edible plants and how to move silently through the forest. One afternoon, while gathering fruits, loud crashing sounds came from the underbrush. Minji froze, her skin darkening to warning colors. "Thornwalker," she whispered. "Dangerous. Do not move." A massive creature burst into the clearing, 6-legged with razor-sharp spines covering its body. It sniffed the air, turning toward them. Minji slowly raised her hand, her skin shifting to match the foliage around them. To Juwoo's amazement, his sleeve appeared to take on the same camouflage where she touched it. The effect spread across his clothes. The Thornwalker prowled closer, just feet away now. Juwoo held his breath. The creature snorted, confused by scents it could detect but shapes it couldn't see. Finally, it moved on, crashing away through the forest. "How did you do that?" Juwoo asked when it was safe. Minji's skin rippled with modest pride. "Life sharing. I ask plants to lend their hiding song." She touched his arm again. Your body accepts the song. Interesting. That night, drums sounded again, but with a different rhythm. Urgent, alarming. Ju-woo hurried outside to see very warriors gathering, their skin patterns sharp and aggressive. Night hunters come, Dae-yeon explained, finding him in the confusion. They attack during harvest gathering. Ju-woo hurried back to his ship and returned with his pulse weapon and portable lights. I can help, he insisted. Dae-yeon studied him, then nodded. Follow hunting leader Sora. Do as she says. Sora, a tall Very with scared patterns on her arms, positioned Ju-woo on a high platform with several defenders. Below, shadowy shapes approached, predators moving with frightening coordination toward the settlement. Wait for my signal, Sora commanded. When the creatures reached the clearing below, Sora whistled. Defenders threw seed pods that burst into blinding light. Ju activated his pulse weapon, sending stunning charges into the largest predators. The very warriors descended on vines, wielding crystal-tipped spears with deadly precision. One creature broke through, climbing toward the children's chambers. Ju didn't hesitate. He swung across on a vine, landing between the predator and its target. His weapon had drained its charge, so he used it as a club, striking the creature's sensitive snout. It recoiled long enough for Sora to arrive, driving her spear into a vulnerable spot. The battle ended quickly. The surviving predators retreated, carrying their wounded. As dawn broke, Dae-yeon called the tribe together. The Skywalker fought beside us, she announced, her skin glowing with formal patterns. He protected our young ones with no thought for himself. She touched Ju-woo's forehead, leaving a temporary pattern of light. Today, Ju-woo Park becomes tribe friend. He will learn our ways, and we will learn his. Together, we are stronger. The very skin rippled with approval. Minji beamed beside him, her patterns mirroring his borrowed forehead mark. Now you are not alone here, she said simply. Ju-woo looked around at the faces of the very, no longer alien, but becoming familiar. For the first time since his crash, he wondered if being stranded here might be not just survivable, but valuable beyond anything he could have discovered on his original mission. As seasons changed on the alien world, Ju-woo settled into a rhythm with the very tribe. After the night attack, his status shifted from curious visitor to respected tribe friend. The very now actively sought his knowledge, while eagerly sharing their own. Each morning, Ju-woo taught what he called the exchange circle. A group of very gathered around him as he drew diagrams in the soft earth or displayed images on his tablet. Today, he explained basic principles of water pressure. Water always seeks the lowest point, he said, pouring liquid from his canteen into a series of bamboo-like tubes he had arranged. If we place containers at different heights, we can move water without carrying it. Minji translated concepts his limited very vocabulary couldn't express. Her skin rippled with fascination patterns as the water flowed uphill through a simple pump Ju-woo had constructed. The falling water here pushes the water there up, she explained to the others, like how tall trees pull water to highest branches. Dae-yeon, watching from nearby, nodded approvingly. The Skywalker's knowledge can help during dry season. Many hands saved from carrying water. After the lesson, Ju-woo followed Hana, the tribe's master healer, into the forest. In exchange for his engineering lessons, she taught him about the planet's remarkable medicinal plants. This moss, Hana said, carefully harvesting a blue-green growth from a tree trunk, stops blood flow immediately. She pressed it to a small cut on her arm. The bleeding stopped within seconds. Ju-woo made careful notes in his tablet. On my world, this could save many lives. Hana smiled, her skin glowing with soft golden patterns of pride. Next, I show you Growth Helper. Heals broken bones in days, not moons. The Growth Helper turned out to be a crystal formation that grew on certain rock faces. When ground into powder and mixed with specific tree sap, it created a paste that accelerated cell regeneration. Ju-woo recorded everything. Knowing this knowledge alone justified the Horizon's entire mission. Their routine continued for weeks. Jiwoo taught the Very about simple machines, solar energy collection, and water purification. The Very taught him their biological wisdom, how to communicate with plants, sustainable harvesting methods, and natural medicine that rivaled Earth's most advanced treatments. Together, they created hybrid solutions that neither culture could have developed alone. Jiwoo designed irrigation systems using local materials, while the Very showed him how to train certain vines to grow along specific paths, creating living aqueducts. One day, Minji led Jiwoo to a secluded grove, where bright flowers grew in perfect circles. "Time for you to learn sound speaking," she announced. Sound speaking. How we ask plants to grow differently. Very difficult for non-Very, but Daeun thinks you might learn some. For hours, Minji demonstrated how different tones affected the flowers. When she hummed a rising note, the blooms opened. A falling tone made them close. Complex melodies could shape the direction of new growth. Jiwoo tried repeatedly but produced no response from the plants. He sighed in frustration. "Maybe my voice is too different." Minji's skin pulsed with determination. "Try with this." She handed him a small flute-like instrument made from a hollow reed. Breath, not voice. Jiwoo played the simple rising notes Minji had taught him. To his amazement, the nearest flower trembled slightly and turned toward him. "It worked," he exclaimed. Minji's skin flashed with excitement patterns. "You have gift. Few outsiders ever learn plant song." The changing seasons brought new challenges. As temperature dropped, many plants entered dormancy periods. The Very preserved foods and prepared their living dwellings for colder weather. During this time, Jiwoo noticed some Very beginning to change. Their skin patterns shifted to predominantly red and orange hues, and they grew slightly taller. "The season change happens," Minji explained when he asked. "Some become cedars now. When warm returns, they become nurturers again." Jiwoo nodded, trying to understand their complex biology. Their reproduction seemed to involve both seasonal changes and deliberate biological transformations, a system that had evolved perfectly for their world. As the cold season deepened, a new challenge emerged. Children began falling ill with severe respiratory symptoms. The illness spread quickly through the youngest members of the tribe. Hana's remedies helped but couldn't fully cure the sickness. After a particularly difficult night where a young child struggled to breathe, Jiwoo approached Daeun. "I want to help," he said. "In my ship, I have tools that might identify what makes them sick." Daeun's skin showed concerned patterns, but she nodded. "Bring your knowledge tools. Our children suffer." Jiwoo returned to his ship and collected his portable medical scanner, microscope, and basic treatment supplies. Back at the settlement, he worked alongside Hana, examining samples from sick children. Through his microscope, Jiwoo identified a microscopic organism multiplying in their breathing passages. It resembled a fungal infection, but behaved more like a virus. "Look," he showed Hana the magnified image. "These tiny life forms caused the sickness." Hana studied the strange sight with wonder. So small, yet so strong. They worked together for days. Jiwoo's medical knowledge helped identify the pathogen's weaknesses, while Hana knew which plants might target it. Together, they developed a treatment combining an antifungal medication from Jiwoo's supplies with a local plant extract Hana prepared. The first child treated showed improvement within hours. Soon, all the affected children were recovering. The Very celebrated with a special ceremony where Jiwoo and Hana were honored together. During the celebration, as drums played and the Very danced with joyful skin patterns, Daeun approached Jiwoo. "You could have stayed in your metal home," she said, "safe from our troubles. But you chose to help." Jiwoo shook his head. "You welcomed me when I crashed here. We're connected now." Daeun touched his shoulder, leaving a brief glow pattern that marked special respect in Very culture. "Today, our knowledge and yours became one wisdom. This is rare treasure." That night, as Jiwoo recorded the day's events in his journal, He reflected on how much had changed. He had arrived expecting to merely survive his 2 years here. Instead, he had found a partnership that transcended their biological differences. The Very's biological wisdom complemented his technological knowledge perfectly. Together, they had created solutions neither could have achieved alone. Earth science had helped save Very children, while Very medicine could potentially revolutionize human healthcare. Most importantly, Ju realized he had stopped counting days until repair completion. For the first time since the crash, he found himself hoping the repairs might take just a little longer. Ju woke to the sound of his ship's alarm. He hadn't heard it in months, having grown accustomed to the natural rhythms of Very life. Pulling on his clothes, he rushed down the living pathways of the tree city toward the ground. "I must check my ship," he explained to the curious Very he passed. At the horizon, the emergency alert flashed on the main console. The ship had detected unusual energy signatures beyond the northern mountains, artificial power sources that hadn't been there before. "Computer, analyze energy pattern," Ju commanded. "Energy signature matches Talus Corporation mining equipment," replied the AI. "Probability 97.8%. Juwoo's heart sank. The Talus Corporation was notorious throughout known space for aggressive resource extraction. They located uninhabited planets, stripped them of valuable minerals, and left devastated ecosystems behind. He returned to the settlement to find Davin and the council elders waiting. Minji had alerted them to his sudden departure. "Something troubles you," Daeun said, her skin showing concerned patterns. Juwoo nodded. "Other humans have come. Not like me." "They are." He struggled to find the right words in Very language. "They are takers. They destroy lands to collect metals." He drew a rough map in the dirt, showing the mountains where the energy signatures originated. "They will harm the forest, poison the rivers, everything the Very need to live." The council's skin darkened with alarm patterns. One elder spoke up. "Why would they destroy what gives life?" "For metals they value," Ju explained. "They see only what they can take, not what they harm." Daeun stood tall, decision patterns flowing across her skin. "We must see these takers. Then we decide." The next morning, Ju joined a small group including Daeun, Minji, and Sora, the hunt leader. They traveled swiftly through the forest toward the mountains, moving with the silent grace of the Very. As they crested a ridge, Juwoo's worst fears were confirmed. In the valley below, automated mining equipment had already cleared several acres of forest. Huge machines stripped the land, while processing units extracted minerals from the soil. No human operators were visible. Talus typically used fully automated systems controlled from orbit. "The water," Minji whispered, pointing to a stream flowing from the mining site. Even from a distance, they could see its unnatural color. Sora's skin displayed battle patterns. "We must destroy their machines." "These machines are strong," Juwoo cautioned. "They have defenses. We need a plan." They retreated to a safe distance to discuss options. Juwoo explained the mining operations' likely weaknesses: sensor arrays, communication systems, and cooling units. "The machines need to talk to each other," he said. "If we block their speaking, they will stop working." Daeun nodded thoughtfully. "And how do machines speak?" "With invisible signals through the air, like your skin patterns, but we cannot see them without tools." For 3 days, they observed the mining operation, noting patterns and vulnerabilities. Ju used his ship systems to analyze the communication frequencies the machines used. Meanwhile, Hana and other Very worked to create compounds from local plants. They produced a thick resin that could clog mechanical systems and a corrosive sap that damaged metal surfaces. On the 4th night, they implemented their plan. Sora led a team to apply Hana's compounds to critical components, while Ju used modified equipment from his ship to jam the operation's communication signals. At first, their efforts seemed successful. Machines faltered, sensors failed, and extraction paused. But then, alarm systems triggered. Security drones deployed from the main processing unit, scanning the area with harsh spotlights. Back to the trees, Sora ordered as a drone approached their position. They retreated into the forest, but one drone tracked them, firing warning shots that scorched tree trunks nearby. Juwu and the Very scattered, using the dense vegetation for cover. Minji pulled Juwu behind a massive root system as the drone hovered overhead. Its sensors swept the area, searching for heat signatures. "It sees our body heat," Juwu whispered. Minji's skin shifted to cooling patterns. To Juwu's amazement, the temperature of her skin actually dropped. She touched his arm, and he felt a pleasant coolness spread across his body. "Temp sharing," she explained. "Be still." The drone passed overhead without detecting them, but more were spreading throughout the forest. They needed a new strategy. Back at a safe meeting point, Daeyeon gathered the group. "We cannot defeat machines with just plant weapons," she admitted. "There is another way," Juwu said, an idea forming. "We can make the company believe this planet is already claimed and protected." He explained his plan. Using his ship's communication array, he would transmit warnings about the planet's protected status. A bluff, but one that might work if properly supported. "Talos avoids planets with legal protection," he explained. "Too much trouble for them." "And if they do not believe?" Sora asked. "Then we show them the true power of the Very," Daeyeon replied, her skin displaying determination patterns. The next day, Juwu modified his ship's transmitter to broadcast on frequencies used by interstellar corporations. He crafted official-sounding warnings about violating protected space and threatening sanctions. At the same time, the Very prepared their own response. They gathered their most potent biological compounds and readied defensive positions throughout the forest edge nearest the mining operation. When security forces arrived to investigate the sabotage, they encountered more than they expected. The forest itself seemed to fight back. Vines ensnared equipment, spore clouds disabled sensors, and glowing decoys led drones in circles. The Very moved like shadows, their skin blending perfectly with the environment. They applied corrosive compounds to vulnerable joints and covered sensor arrays with resin. Juwu continued his electronic deception, sending increasingly urgent warnings about violating Treaty Zone 7 Alpha and pending Galactic Council sanctions. The combined pressure worked. After 3 days of frustrated efforts and mounting equipment failures, the mining operation initiated shutdown procedures. The remaining security drones returned to their docking stations, and the machinery fell silent. From their observation point, Juwu and Daeyeon watched as the main processor unit folded itself into transport configuration. "They're leaving," Juwu confirmed, checking readings on his scanner. The bluff worked. "They think it's not worth the trouble." Daeyeon's skin displayed victory patterns, but with undertones of concern. "Will more takers come?" "Maybe, someday," Juwu admitted. "But now we know how to protect your world." As they returned to the settlement, Minji walked beside Juwu. "Your people and machines. Our people and life forces. Together we won." Juwu nodded, realizing how far he had come from being the stranded spacer just trying to survive. Now he fought to protect this world, not because he was stuck here, but because he had come to love it. The celebration that night was joyous, with drums and dancing blasting until dawn. Yet beneath the happiness, Juwu felt a new concern growing. His ship's repair cycle was nearly complete. Soon, he would face a choice he never expected to find difficult, whether to return to his own people or remain with those who had become his second family. The morning Juwu's ship announced completed repairs, he sat alone by the lake where he had crashed nearly 2 years ago. The horizon gleamed in the early light, fully functional once more. The quantum drive had regenerated its critical components. Life support, navigation, and communication systems all showed green status. He could leave today if he chose. Yet Juwu felt no rush to board his vessel. Instead, he watched ripples spread across the water as small flying creatures skimmed its surface. This alien world, once so strange and threatening, now felt more like home than any place he had known before. Minji found him there, her skin showing concerned patterns. "Your metal bird is healed," she said simply, sitting beside him. "Yes, I can return to my people now." "Will you go soon?" Her skin dimmed slightly, emotion patterns subdued. Before Ju could answer, his ship's alarm sounded, not the warning klaxon, but the soft chime indicating an approaching vessel. He jumped to his feet, scanning the sky. The captain nodded. "We can see that. We also detected unauthorized mining activity in this sector recently. When it suddenly ceased, we diverted to investigate." Her eyes kept moving to Minji, whose iridescent skin shifted with subtle patterns. "I see you've made contact." "This is Minji of the Very," Ju introduced. "They'd been my hosts and friends for 2 years. Their help was crucial in stopping the mining operation." Word of the visitors spread quickly. By midday, Daeyeon and the council arrived at the landing site. The Earth officers watched in poorly disguised amazement as the Very approached, their tall forms moving with impossible grace, skin patterns communicating emotions without words. Inside the Solaris, Ju detailed his time with the Very. He described their advanced biological knowledge, sustainable living practices, and remarkable abilities to control their environment without destroying it. "This planet should receive protected status immediately," he insisted. "The Very's biological knowledge alone is worth more than any minerals Talus could extract." Captain Lee studied the data Ju had collected. Impressive. A previously unknown sentient species with technologies that complement rather than replicate our own. She nodded. "I'll support your recommendation for protection." Outside, crew members cautiously interacted with the Very. One technician had brought out a music player, and the Very showed great interest in Earth melodies. In return, they demonstrated how their skin patterns could create visual symphonies of light and color. As evening approached, Daeyeon requested a council with both Ju and the Earth visitors. They gathered in the Very's sacred circle, where the tribe performed their most important ceremonies. "We understand the Skywalker will return to his people," Daeyeon began, her skin patterns formal and dignified. "We wish to offer a gift before his departure." Hannah stepped forward, carrying a living container that pulsed with gentle light. Inside were seedlings, crystals, and small vials of liquid. "These are our healing treasures," Daeyeon explained. "Knowledge grown from our world to help yours." Ju translated, watching Captain Lee's eyes widen at the implications. The medical applications alone could transform human healthcare across settled space. In return, Daeyeon continued, "We ask for protection from those who would harm our forest and waters." The captain nodded. "I am authorized to establish preliminary protected status for this planet. No corporation may extract resources without full review." As the formal exchange concluded, Minji approached Ju privately. "You will go with the new skyship." Ju hesitated. The question had haunted him all day. His duty and career pulled him toward Earth, but his heart had found connection here. "I must report what I've learned," he said finally, "but I will request to return as Earth's representative to the Very." Minji's skin brightened with hope patterns. "You would come back." "This place, your people, changed me," Ju said simply. "I can help ensure the Very receive proper protection and respect." The next morning, preparations for departure began. The Solaris crew loaded Ju's research data and biological samples. Medical officers carefully documented the healing compounds the Very had provided. As Ju packed his few belongings from the dwelling the Very had grown for him, Daeyeon arrived with a final gift, a living pendant that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. "This stays connected to our great tree," she explained. "Wherever you travel, you carry a piece of our world." Ju accepted it with deep gratitude. "I will wear it always." The farewell ceremony took place at midday. The entire tribe gathered, their skin displaying patterns of both sadness and celebration. Children whom Ju had helped save from illness brought woven sashes of living fibers. Warriors he had fought beside offered small tokens carved from crystal. Minji stepped forward last. Without speaking, she placed her hands on either side of Juwoo's face. Her skin glowed brilliantly, transferring a temporary pattern to his forehead. The mark of a life-bonded friend, the highest honor in Very culture. "You came as stranger," she said, echoing the words spoken after his first days with them. "You leave as Very kin. The stars between us are just distances, not barriers." Juwoo struggled to find words. "I will return," he promised finally. "What we began here, the sharing of knowledge, it's too important to end." Captain Lee respectfully waited until the ceremony concluded before approaching. "Time to go, Commander. We have a long journey ahead." Boarding the Solaris felt strange after so long in the living structures of the Very. The metal walls seemed cold and lifeless by comparison. As the ship's engines powered up, Juwoo stood at the viewport, watching the gathered Very below. They raised their arms in farewell, their skin creating a dazzling display visible even from altitude. As the ship broke atmosphere, Juwoo touched the living pendant at his neck. It pulsed warmly, a reminder of the world below and the promise of return. Captain Lee joined him at the viewport. 2 years with an alien species. Your insights will be invaluable to Earth's sinologists. She studied his expression. "Though I suspect part of you remained behind." Juwoo nodded. "I learned something important there, Captain. True progress isn't just about better technology. It's about finding balance between what we create and what we preserve." The Solaris accelerated toward the jump point, leaving the blue-green planet behind. But in his heart, Juwoo knew this wasn't an ending. The Very had forever changed him, just as he had changed them. Their shared knowledge would benefit both worlds for generations to come. And somewhere in his future, beyond the reports and debriefings awaiting him, lay a return journey to the place where he had crashed by accident, but stayed by choice, his second home among the wild beauty of the Very.